Nobody loves me. She said it the way other children say I'm hungry or I'm tired, not crying, not begging, just stating a fact she had already made peace with. She was maybe 6 years old, standing alone at a gas station, holding a stuffed rabbit so worn it had lost one eye, while engines roared all around her, and not a single adult stopped until one man did. And when he knelt down in front of her, 150 bikers went completely silent. If this story moves you, subscribe, hit the bell, and drop your city in the comments. Let me see how far this ride goes. The summer Marcus Holt turned 53, he made himself a promise. He promised himself he was done being the kind of man who looked away. It had taken him decades to get there, through 2 failed marriages, a son he barely knew, years working construction in 3 different states, and one particularly bad winter in Memphis, where he slept in his truck for 11 days and told nobody. Marcus wasn't looking for sympathy. He never had been. What he was looking for, if he was being honest with himself, was something he couldn't quite name, a reason to believe that people at their core were still worth something. That the world hadn't quietly finished its job of grinding everything tender into dust. That's what the writing was about more than anything else. It wasn't the bikes. Well, it was the bikes, he'd admit that. But it wasn't only the bikes. It was the fact that when you rode with a group, when you felt that convoy moving in formation down an open highway, everybody keeping pace, everybody watching everybody else's back, you felt part of something real, something that didn't need a committee or a press release or an HR department to tell you it mattered. Marcus had been riding with the Iron Brotherhood for 11 years, 150 men, mechanics, veterans, teachers, former cops, retired firefighters from 6 counties across the state. They weren't a gang. They never had been. They were just men who had found each other at the right time and decided that the best way to honor that was to keep showing up. That Saturday in August, they were doing a charity run 43 miles to a children's hospital fundraiser in the next county. The route was simple. The weather was clear. Marcus was riding third in formation just behind their road captain, Eddie Ruiz, who had a laugh like a foghorn and hands like 2 catcher's mitts, and who had served 3 tours in Afghanistan without talking about any of them. Everything was ordinary until the gas station. And they pulled in just past Route 9, not because they needed to, but because Eddie had called a 10-minute stretch break over the radio. 150 bikes taking a rest stop is not a quiet event. The lot filled fast, engines cutting out in waves, the roar dropping to a murmur, and then to something like the sound of a lake settling after a stone's been thrown in. Marcus climbed off his bike and rolled his shoulders. He pulled off his helmet and raked a hand through his silver hair and breathed in the smell of gasoline and late summer heat. Around him, men were already pulling out water bottles, trading jokes, leaning against their tanks. He was halfway to the vending machine near the side wall when he saw her. At first, his brain didn't fully register what he was looking at. Just a small shape off to the side, not moving. Sitting on the curb at the far edge of the parking lot, away from the noise. A little girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, in a dirty pink t-shirt and shorts. Holding something against her chest, a stuffed animal of some kind. He'd see later that it was a rabbit gray-brown from handling missing one eye. She wasn't crying, that was the thing that stopped him. Not her crying, but her not crying. She was sitting completely still, watching the ground between her shoes with the particular stillness of a child who has learned that crying doesn't change anything. Marcus stood there for a moment. He looked around. He looked at the wow station door, at the small window, at the cars, at the pumps, at the men moving around the lot. Nobody was going to her. Nobody seemed to see her. He walked over. "Hey there," he said. He kept his voice easy, the way you do with a spooked animal, the way his own mother used to talk to him when he'd come home from school having had a bad day. "You all right?" She looked up at him. Her eyes were brown and they were old. Not old the way tired eyes are old the way certain kinds of knowing are old. Like she had already figured out something about the world that most adults spend their whole lives trying not to figure out. She said, "Nobody loves me." Marcus went very still inside. She didn't say it to get a reaction. She didn't say it as a question or a plea or a performance. She said it the way you state something that you've already made your peace with. The sky is blue. Water is wet. Nobody loves me. Marcus crouched down so he was at her level. His knees protested he was 53 years old with the cartilage situation to prove it, but he got down there and looked her in the face. What's your name? He asked. Lily, she said. I'm Marcus. He paused. Where's your mama, Lily? Lily looked at the door of the gas station. In there. How long have you been sitting out here? She thought about it seriously the way little kids do when they're trying to be accurate. A long time, she said, since the other car left. Marcus frowned. What other car? The man's car, she said. My mama was talking to him for a long time, and then he left, and she got mad, and then she said, I had to wait outside. He processed that carefully. How long ago did that happen? I don't know. She hugged the rabbit tighter. I was really hungry before. Now I'm not really hungry anymore. That last part hit him somewhere low and solid the way a certain kind of truth does when it arrives without warning. Now I'm not really hungry anymore. Said not with complaint, but with the quiet resignation of a child who has learned that hunger too, if you wait long enough, will eventually stop asking. Lily, Marcus said, did your mama say something to you when she told you to come outside? Lily was quiet for a moment. Then, she said nobody loves me anyway. A small pause. So I shouldn't bother her. Marcus stood up slowly. He turned around and without meaning to, without having planned it, he looked back at the lot at his brothers, the 150 men who had ridden out that morning, and something in his face must have said everything, because Eddie Ruiz, who was closest, who had been watching from 20 feet away, with his water bottle halfway to his mouth, lowered the bottle. What's wrong? Eddie called. Marcus just looked at him. Then he looked back down at Lily, then back at Eddie. Eddie walked over. He was a big man, Eddie 6'2", 230 arms like bridge cables. Men who didn't know him were sometimes afraid of him. Children, for reasons nobody had ever fully explained, never were. Lily looked up at him the same way she looked up at Marcus, without fear, without hope, without much of anything. Hello, little bit, Eddie said, his voice going quieter than Marcus had ever heard it. Hi, said Lily. Eddie looked at Marcus. Marcus said very quietly, she's been out here alone a long time. Her mother sent her outside. Something shifted behind Eddie's eyes. It wasn't explosive. It was the opposite, a slow tightening like a cable taking on weight. How long? Eddie said. She's not sure. Marcus paused. She said she was hungry earlier, but she's not anymore. The two men looked at each other. In 11 years of riding together, they had handled situations. Breakdowns, accidents, altercations, a medical emergency once, when a brother went down on the highway, and they'd formed a barrier around him on both lanes until the ambulance arrived. They had a system. They had a way of doing things. This was different. This was a 6-year-old girl on a parking lot curb who had accepted completely and without drama that nobody loved her. Eddie straightened up. He turned around to the lot and made a short, specific gesture. Not loud, not showy, just a motion with 2 fingers. The kind that meant, come here now, quiet. Men started to move. It happened without announcement, without anyone raising their voice. That was what would stay with Marcus for years afterward, the silence of it. 150 men who were capable of making an enormous amount of noise chose in that moment to make almost none. They drifted over in 1s and 2s. They crouched down, they sat on curbs. They pulled snacks from saddlebags, granola bars, crackers, beef jerky, a bag of trail mix someone had been carrying since Denver. One man, a retired school teacher named Darnell Washington, who rode a 2009 Road King and always carried things in his left jacket pocket that he called just-in-case supplies, produced a pack of peanut butter crackers, opened them and placed them on the ground beside Lily without a word. She looked at them. She looked at Darnell. He nodded at the crackers. Go ahead, he said. She picked them up and ate them methodically, 1 cracker at a time, still holding the rabbit. The men watched her eat, and nobody said anything, and that silence was one of the loudest things Marcus had ever been part of. Tommy Briggs, 29 years old and the youngest member of the Brotherhood, sat down on the curb 2 feet from Lily, and after a moment said, Cool rabbit, what's his name? Lily looked at him. She doesn't have a name. How come? Lily considered this with great seriousness. Because I didn't know how long I'd keep her. Tommy's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He looked down at his boots. Well, he said, she looks like a keeper to me. Lily looked at the rabbit. She said very quietly, almost to herself, my mama says I shouldn't get attached to things. Inside the gas station, Marcus had gone to find her. He had pushed through the glass door, and the air conditioning had hit him, and he had scanned the small fluorescent space, the aisles of snacks and motor oil, the lottery machine, the cooler of drinks along the back wall, and he had found her immediately, the way you find certain people in a room by the particular quality of their presence. She was at the back counter, leaning against the drinks cooler, phone to her ear, one hand on her hip. She was young, early 30s, maybe Marcus guessed, though she looked worn in a way that added years. She was dressed in a tank top and cutoffs, hair pulled back, and she was talking in the fast, low voice of someone in the middle of something that had been going badly for a while. She didn't look up when Marcus walked toward her. He stopped a few feet away and waited. She glanced at him, then away, then back. "Can I help you?" she said, not to Marcus, but into the phone, the tone making clear she was talking to whoever was on the other end. Marcus said, "Excuse me, ma'am." She held up one finger. 1 minute. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Then he said clearly and without heat, "There's a little girl outside who says she's been waiting alone for a long time. I think she might be yours." That got her attention. She lowered the phone. "She's fine. She's been out there long enough to stop feeling hungry," Marcus said. The woman's eyes moved a quick flicker like a tell in a poker game. "She's dramatic," she said. "She's always doing stuff like that." "She didn't seem dramatic to me," Marcus said. "She seemed tired." "Look," the woman pushed herself off the cooler. "I don't know who you are, but my kid is fine and you don't need to." "She told me," Marcus said, "that you told her nobody loves her." Which the silence in the back of that gas station was a different kind of silence than the one outside. Thin, breakable. The woman said, "That's not—" She stopped, started again. "She misunderstood what I—" "She's 6, Marcus said. The woman stared at him. Her jaw was tight, and her eyes were doing something complicated the way eyes do when someone is deciding how much of the truth they're willing to be in the same room with. "You need to mind your own business," she said. "She made it my business," Marcus said when she sat down on that curb. He walked back outside. He didn't know yet what was going to happen. He didn't have a plan. What he had was a little girl eating peanut butter crackers on a parking lot curb, surrounded by 150 men who had gone very, very quiet, and the particular feeling in his chest that he associated with moments where something important was about to be decided one way or another about what kind of people everyone present was going to turn out to be. He sat back down in front of Lily. "Are those good?" he said, nodding at the crackers. She nodded. She had cracker dust on her chin. She wiped it with the back of her hand, and the gesture was so small, so normal, so thoroughly childlike in the middle of everything that was wrong, that 2 men standing behind Marcus had to look away. "Lily," Marcus said, "can I ask you something?" "Okay," she said. "How long have you and your mama been traveling?" She thought about it. "A long time. We stay at different places." "Do you have a house?" "We did," she said. "Then we didn't." "Where do you sleep?" "In the car mostly, sometimes at people's houses." She paused. "We don't stay very long at the houses." Marcus nodded slowly. "Do you go to school?" Something flickered across her face, not quite sadness, not quite longing, something in between. "I used to," she said. "I liked it." Another pause, smaller. "I liked my teacher. Her name was Miss Patterson. She said I was a good reader." "I bet you are," Marcus said. "I liked the books," Lily said. "We had to leave them, though, when we moved. We couldn't take a lot of stuff." She looked down at the rabbit. "I kept her, though." "You made the right call," Marcus said. Lily looked up at him. She had finished the crackers. Her eyes were steady, searching, weighing something. Then she said, "Are you going to forget about me?" The question came out so simply. Not dramatic, not calculated, just honest. The way children are honest before the world teaches them to be careful with their honesty. Marcus felt something shift in the architecture of his chest. He looked at her. He made sure she could see his face clearly when he answered. "No," he said, "I'm not." So, Darnell Washington had already moved to the payphone on the far side of the station. They still had one, a relic bolted to the cinder block wall, and was making calls. Quietly, methodically, the way he did everything. He had a brother-in-law who worked with County Child Services. He had a pastor at a church 2 towns over who ran emergency placement housing. He had a notebook always in his right jacket pocket filled with small, handwritten numbers. Tommy Briggs had found a hair tie in his saddlebag left over from his daughter's last visit. He'd explain later, and he offered it to Lily, who solemnly accepted it and spent several minutes attempting to put her hair up. And when she couldn't quite manage it, Tommy did it for her, clumsy and concentrating, and muttering under his breath about how his daughter always made this look easier than it was. And Lily sat patiently while he worked, and when he finished, she touched the back of her head with both hands to feel it. "Is it okay?" Tommy said. "It's good," she said, and she almost smiled. Eddie Ruiz stood at the edge of the lot with his arms crossed, watching the gas station door. Not threatening, not aggressive, just present. The way a wall is present. The kind of presence that says, we are aware of what's happening here, and we are not going anywhere. A trucker who had pulled in for fuel looked at the scene. 150 bikers gathered in quiet formation walked around a small girl and stood by his cab for a long moment, then climbed back in and sat there because whatever was happening, he could tell it wasn't nothing. Marcus stayed with Lily. He stayed because someone needed to, and because he had decided sitting on that parking lot curb that this was not the kind of moment you walked away from and then drove home and went back to your life and thought, well, I hope someone helped her. He was someone. Lily finished the crackers and held the empty wrapper carefully, looking for somewhere to put it. Marcus held out his hand and she placed it in his palm with the seriousness of a small ceremony. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you," he said. She looked at him. "For what? For talking to me." She seemed to consider whether this was a reasonable thing to thank someone for. She appeared to decide that it was because she gave one small nod and went back to looking at her rabbit. "What do you think she thinks about?" she said after a while. "Your rabbit? Yeah." Marcus considered it seriously. "I think," he said, "she thinks about the person who's carrying her." Lily held the rabbit up and looked at it. The rabbit's remaining eye-black button, slightly loose, caught the light. "I've had her since I was little," Lily said. "Like really little. I don't remember getting her." She paused. "That means someone gave her to me when I was a baby, right? Because I couldn't buy her myself." "That's right," Marcus said. "So someone gave me something," Lily said, working through it carefully, "before I even knew them." She looked at him. "Does that mean they loved me?" Marcus looked at this little girl, this tired, hungry, impossibly thoughtful little girl on her curb in the August heat, doing arithmetic on love, with a 6-year-old's calculator, and he felt something that he would not have a word for until much later. Something between grief and gratitude, in a kind of fierce protective fury so deep, it had gone past anger into something quieter and more permanent. "Yeah," he said, "that means they loved you." She looked at the rabbit a moment longer. Then she put it back against her chest, both arms around it. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay, Tim." It was at that moment that the gas station door opened, and Lily's mother came out. She stepped into the heat and the light, and she saw what was waiting for her. Not an angry crowd, not a confrontation, but something in some ways more confronting than either of those things. 150 men silent and still looking at her with faces that held no rage and no contempt and no judgment. Just knowing. The particular knowing of people who have seen enough of the world to recognize what they are looking at. She stopped. Her phone was in her hand, her chin came up. Her expression said she was prepared to be defensive, prepared to argue, prepared to do whatever she normally did when the world pushed back at her. But nobody pushed, nobody said a word. Eddie Ruiz, still standing at the edge of the lot, just looked at her. Darnell Washington by the payphone looked at her. Tommy Briggs, crouched near Lily, looked at her. And Marcus, still kneeling in front of her daughter, looked at her and then looked deliberately quietly down at Lily. The woman's eyes dropped to her daughter. Lily was looking at her mother. And in Lily's face there was no accusation, no fear, no hope, just the same quiet, terrible acceptance that had stopped Marcus in his tracks in the first place. Something happened in the woman's face. A crack ran through it, small, brief there, and gone in a second, the kind of crack that appears in something before it either breaks or holds. She took one step toward Lily. Marcus stood up slowly and stepped to the side, making room. The lot held its breath. She took one step toward Lily and then she stopped. Not because anyone blocked her, not because anyone said a word. She stopped because of the silence, the particular weight of it, the way it pressed against her from every direction, the way 150 pairs of eyes can feel like a physical thing when every single one of them is looking at you with the same expression. Not hate, not judgment, Something worse than both of those. Recognition. Her name was Crystal. Marcus would learn that later. Crystal Marie Doyle, 31 years old, originally from a small town in Kentucky that she had left at 17 and never gone back to. He would learn a great many things about Crystal in the hours that followed, things that would complicate the anger he was feeling in ways he wasn't entirely prepared for. But that was later. Right now, standing in the August heat outside a gas station off Route 9, Crystal was just a woman who had walked out a door and found herself standing in front of something she couldn't argue with. Her daughter's face. "Lily Pum," she said. Her voice came out wrong, too sharp at the edges, trying to be normal and landing somewhere beside it. "Come here." Lily didn't move right away. She looked at her mother with those brown eyes that were older than they should have been, and for one long breath, she just held still, like a small animal deciding something. Then she stood up, clutching her rabbit, and walked toward Crystal. Marcus watched it happen. He watched Crystal's hand come out and take Lily's shoulder. Watched the fingers grip, not hard, not gentle, just automatic, the grip of a woman who moved through the world doing things with her hands before her heart caught up with what those hands were doing. He watched Lily accept the grip without flinching, the way she accepted everything, without flinching. "We're going," Crystal said. She wasn't talking to Marcus. She wasn't talking to anyone specific. She was talking to the air, to the situation, to the 150 men standing around her who hadn't said a word and didn't need to. "Ma'am," Marcus said. Crystal turned her head. "I just want to make sure she's okay," Marcus said. "Careful, level. That's all." "She's fine," Crystal said. "She's my kid." "I know she is," Marcus said. "And I know you've probably had a hard—" "You don't know anything about me," Crystal said, and her voice cracked on the last word in a way she clearly hadn't intended, because her jaw tightened immediately after sealing whatever had tried to come out back behind her teeth. Marcus looked at her. He looked at Lily, who was standing beside her mother holding the rabbit and watching the ground. "She told me she was hungry," Marcus said quietly. "She said she'd stopped feeling it." The crack in Crystal's voice spread to her face, just for a second. Just 1 second where the hardness slipped and something raw and ashamed moved underneath it, and Marcus saw it, and Crystal knew he saw it, and that made it worse. "I was going to feed her," Crystal said. I had to handle something first." "How long has she been outside?" Darnell Washington said. He had walked over quietly from the payphone, notebook still in hand. He said it without accusation, just with the calm directness of a man who had spent 30 years in a classroom asking questions that needed answers. Crystal looked at him, then at the notebook. Something shifted in her expression, a new awareness, the kind that comes when a situation stops feeling like an argument and starts feeling like a record being kept. "An hour," she said, then quieter, "maybe 2. Nobody responded to that. Nobody had to. The silence did the work. Crystal's hand was still on Lily's shoulder, and Lily still hadn't looked up, and Marcus stood there watching the two of them, this woman and this little girl who belonged to each other in the most complicated, most irrevocable way possible, and he felt the whole scene balanced on a wire. One wrong word, and Crystal would take her daughter, get in her car, drive away, and this would be over. Just another thing that happened at a gas station. Just another little girl that went back to whatever her life was. "Crystal," Marcus said. He didn't know why he used her name. He had heard it from the bus station attendant inside who had mentioned it offhand. Maybe he used it because he had learned in 53 years that people are harder to dismiss when they know you know who they are. "Can I ask you something?" She looked at him warily. "What?" "When's the last time you slept?" Whatever she had been expecting, it wasn't that. Her face did something involuntary, a small collapse, swift and unguarded, the face of someone who has been bracing for a blow and receives instead a hand. She recovered fast, crossed her arms, reset. But Marcus had seen it. "I'm fine," she said. "That's not what I asked," he said. She stared at him. He held the look without hardening it, without making it a challenge, just kept it steady and open, the way his mother had taught him a long time ago that certain conversations required. 2 days, Crystal said finally. The words came out like something she was putting down after carrying too long. "Maybe 3. I don't—" She stopped, started again. "We've been driving." "Where are you trying to get to?" Marcus asked. Another pause. Longer this time. The kind of pause where someone is deciding whether to keep the story they've been telling or to put it down and tell a different one. My sister's, Crystal said, in Georgia. She said she had room. A breath. I just have to get there. How far out are you? Darnell asked. 200 miles, maybe. She said it flat like a distance she had been measuring in ways that had nothing to do with a map. Marcus looked at Eddie. Eddie looked back at him. In 11 years, the two of them had developed a shorthand that didn't require words, a whole vocabulary of glances and small gestures that operated below the threshold of speech. This look said, we can't walk away from this. Eddie's look back said, I know. Behind them, without anyone giving an instruction, the Brotherhood was already doing what it did. Tommy Briggs had gone back to his saddlebag and was pulling out a paper bag, the lunch he'd packed that morning, a sandwich and chips and an apple, the kind of lunch a man packs when he knows he's going to be on the road most of the day. He walked it over and crouched in front of Lily and held it out. You hungry? He said. Lily looked at her mother. Crystal watched the exchange and something in her face broke wide open for just a moment. Just one more of those brief, unguarded fractures before she pressed her lips together and nodded once sharply at Lily. Go ahead, Crystal said. Her voice had gone rough. Lily took the bag. She sat back down on the curb and opened it with both hands, careful, deliberate, and she took out the sandwich first and looked at it, and then she looked up at Tommy and said very seriously, Thank you. Anytime, little bit, Tommy said. Crystal watched her daughter eat. And watching her daughter eat, watched by 150 men who had all seen what she hadn't been feeding her, Crystal Doyle did something Marcus had not seen coming. She sat down, just sat down right there on the curb 2 feet from Lily, knees together, elbows on her knees, and she put her face in her hands. She didn't cry, not quite, but her shoulders shook once hard, and then she went very still, and the stillness was worse than the shaking. Marcus sat down beside her. He didn't touch her. He didn't speak. He just sat there the way you sit with someone at the edge of something to let them know they're not sitting alone. After a moment, Crystal's voice came out from behind her hands. I'm not a bad mother. I don't think you are, Marcus said. He meant it. Her hands came down. She looked at him, eyes red at the edges, jaws still tight, trying to hold the shape of herself together. She doesn't understand, Crystal said. I say things when she exhaled. I say things. We all do, Marcus said. Not like that, she said, and something in her voice convicted herself more thoroughly than any accusation could have. She looked at Lily, who was eating the sandwich, with complete focus, the rabbit balanced on her knee. She remembers everything, Crystal said softly. She doesn't forget anything I say. She just stores it, like she's keeping a record. Maybe she is, Marcus said. Crystal flinched. Not against you, Marcus said. Just of what happened. Kids do that. It's how they make sense of things. I've been trying, Crystal said, and now the words were coming faster, tumbling like they'd been under pressure for a long time. I know it doesn't look like it. I know what this looks like. But I've been trying. The job in Chattanooga didn't work out, and before that, the one in Nashville, her dad was supposed to help. He said he was going to help, and then She stopped, pressed the back of her hand against her mouth. We had a car. We had an apartment. We had a life. It wasn't much, but it was a life. And now I'm driving to my sister's house in Georgia and praying she still means what she said, and I haven't slept in 3 days. And I said something terrible to my daughter because a man who was supposed to love us drove away from a gas station and left me with $8 and a quarter tank of gas. She stopped talking. The air between them settled. Marcus absorbed everything she had said. He didn't weigh it or measure it or use it to adjust his opinion of her in either direction. He just let it be what it was, the specific, unglamorous, utterly human truth of how people end up in parking lots in August with everything falling apart. You've got $8, he said. She let out a short, involuntary sound that was almost a laugh, but wasn't quite. 7 now. I got Lily a juice inside. She paused. Before I told her to wait outside, I did get her a juice. I know, Marcus said. He had seen the juice cup on the curb when he first walked over. Crystal looked at him. Why are you being nice to me? She said. And the question wasn't rhetorical. She actually wanted to know, the way someone asks when niceness has been so rare, it becomes suspicious. I left my kid outside for 2 hours. I said, her voice cracked. I said what I said to her. Why are you being Because I've done things I'm not proud of too, Marcus said. Most people have. The difference is most people don't have to do them in front of 150 witnesses. Something in her face shifted toward him. Not trust, not quite yet, but its nearest neighbor. Darnell Washington appeared at Marcus's shoulder. He crouched down to join them at curb level, which for a man his size was a deliberate, humble gesture, the kind of gesture that says, I'm not standing above this conversation. Crystal, Darnell said, I made some calls while you were inside. She looked at him. I've got a contact at the County Family Resource Office, he said. Not child services, not enforcement, nothing like that. Just someone who coordinates emergency assistance, travel help, that kind of thing. He paused. With your permission, I'd like to give her your situation. Crystal's expression moved quickly through several things as fear, pride, resistance, and Marcus watched her sort through them in real time, watched her deal each one and hold it up against the image of her daughter eating a borrowed sandwich on a parking lot curb. I don't want anyone taking her, Crystal said. Nobody's taking anybody, Darnell said, and he said it with the total unhurried certainty of a man who has spent decades dealing with children in crisis situations and knows exactly where every line is. I want to get you to Georgia, that's all. A long silence, then very quietly, okay. Darnell nodded and stood back up. Marcus looked at Eddie, who had been standing just within earshot, and Eddie turned away and started making his way through the crowd of men, speaking in low voices, stopping at one brother and then another. Marcus had seen Eddie do this before, the quiet mobilization, the brotherhood working the way it worked best, which was not with noise or spectacle, but with the kind of efficient, undemonstrative care that most people never associated with men who looked the way they looked. He watched as within 10 minutes a gas card appeared pressed into Crystal's hand by a man named Victor Salazar, who had ridden from 3 counties away that morning and who said simply, for Georgia, and walked away before she could object. He watched as Darnell returned with a phone number written in his careful school teacher's handwriting, and a second number and a third, a shelter with family rooms, a church food pantry that operated 7 days, a county office that had an emergency fund specifically for families in transit. He watched as Tommy Briggs appeared with a grocery bag assembled from the collective saddlebag contents of a dozen different riders and set it carefully beside Crystal, without fanfare, the way you set something down at a shrine. And he watched Lily. He watched her finish the sandwich, watched her fold the paper bag with the same careful precision she brought to everything, pressing the creases flat, making it neat. Watched her look up and find him looking at her. Marcus, she said. Yeah, Lily. She held out the rabbit, not handing it over, just presenting it the way children present things they want you to see properly. I decided to name her, Lily said. Marcus felt the weight of that, the weight of what she had said earlier. I didn't know how long I'd keep her and what it meant that she would naming her now. What are you going to call her, Birmingham? He said. Lily looked at the rabbit with the seriousness of someone who understands that names are permanent. Stays, she said. Marcus was quiet for a moment. That's a good name, he said. It means she's not going anywhere, Lily explained patiently. I know what it means, Marcus said. Lily looked at him. Her brown eyes held something in them now that hadn't been there when he first found her, something small and new and tentative, like a light behind a curtain. Not quite trust, the seed of it maybe, the very beginning. Are you going to forget me? She asked again, the same question she had asked before. But this time it landed differently. This time it wasn't a statement dressed as a question. It was a real question. The kind you only ask when you're starting to care about the answer. Marcus reached into his jacket. He found what he was looking for after a moment, the small brotherhood patch he'd been carrying in his inside pocket for 2 weeks, ever since a new member ceremony where they'd had an extra. He had been meaning to mail it. He hadn't. He held it out to Lily. She looked at it, looked at him. Keep that, he said. So you remember today. She took it with both hands, holding it the way she held the rabbit, with her whole self, not just her fingers. What does it mean? She asked. It means, Marcus said, that somewhere out there are 150 people who know your name. He didn't know then how true that was going to become. He didn't know that Darnell's phone calls had already set something in motion. He didn't know that by the time the sun moved another hour across the sky, a decision would be made that would change the course of what happened next in ways none of them, not Marcus, not Crystal, not Lily could have predicted standing in that parking lot. He didn't know any of that yet. What he knew was that Lily was holding the patch against her chest next to Stays with both arms wrapped around both of them, and that Crystal was sitting beside her on the curb not touching her yet, but closer than she had been. And that the distance between them, which had looked vast and cold an hour ago, was smaller now, not gone, but smaller. And sometimes Marcus had learned, well, there's where everything begins. Darnell's third phone call was the one that changed everything. Marcus didn't hear the full conversation. He caught pieces of it, Darnell's voice dropping lower, the careful pauses where a man on the other end was saying things that required Darnell to stop and think before responding, the way Darnell turned slightly away from the group and pressed the receiver closer to his ear. Marcus recognized the body language of a conversation that was going somewhere unexpected. He had been in enough of those conversations to know what they looked like from the outside. When Darnell hung up, he stood with his back to the group for a moment. Just a moment. Then he turned around. He looked at Marcus first, then at Crystal, then down at Lily, who had fallen asleep sitting upright against her mother's arm, the rabbit tucked under her chin, the Brotherhood patch still in her hand. Crystal had noticed her daughter fall asleep and had, without appearing to decide to do it, shifted her arm so Lily could lean into her properly. She hadn't looked at Marcus when she did it. She'd just done it the way mothers do things they aren't ready to acknowledge quietly in the margins. "Marcus," Darnell said, "can I talk to you for a minute?" They walked 10 feet away, close enough that Marcus could still see Crystal and Lily, far enough for the conversation. "That was Janet Reeves," Darnell said. "She runs emergency family coordination for the county. I've known her 8 years." "What did she say?" Darnell was quiet for one breath. "She says Lily's been flagged before." Marcus went still. "What do you mean flagged?" "Not here, back in Tennessee. There was a wellness call made to the school she attended. The teacher Crystal mentioned Miss Patterson. She reported concerns 7 months ago. A home visit was attempted twice." He paused. Crystal had already moved by the time anyone came. Marcus turned this over carefully, the way you turn something fragile. "So what does that mean now?" "It means Janet has an obligation to make a call herself now that she's been contacted," Darnell said. "Standard protocol. She wanted me to know before she did it." He held Marcus's eyes. "She also said, and this is the part I want you to hear, she said if Crystal cooperates, if she's present and willing, and Lily is clearly not in immediate danger, there's a good chance this becomes a services referral rather than a removal." The word removal landed between them like something dropped from a height. "Crystal can't know that word is in play," Marcus said immediately. "I know that. If she hears a removal, she'll be in that car in 30 seconds. "I know that too," Darnell said. "That's why I'm talking to you first." Marcus looked back at Crystal. She was looking down at Lily's sleeping face with an expression he couldn't fully read. From this distance, something complicated, something that had more than one thing in it at once, the way a person looks when they are both the cause of something and the witness to it. "She loves her," Marcus said. "I know she does," Darnell said. "See is not the question. The question is whether love is enough when someone is running on empty and out of options and making decisions they'll spend years trying to explain to themselves." Marcus rubbed the back of his neck. "How long do we have before Janet makes her call?" 20 minutes, Darnell said. "She said she'd give us 20 minutes. Marcus looked at him. "To do what?" Darnell's expression was the expression of a man who has spent 30 years in rooms where difficult things needed to be said and has never once found a shortcut through them. "To help Crystal make the right decision on her own," he said, "instead of having it made for her." 20 minutes. Marcus walked back. He sat down beside Crystal again, and she looked at him sideways, and something in the way he sat must have told her something was different, because her jaw tightened and her arm moved slightly around Lily, not pulling her away, just aware. A mother's reflex. The oldest one there is. "Something happened," she said, "not a question." "I need to be straight with you," Marcus said. "Then be straight." Darnell's contact at the county, the person he called, she has a record of a welfare concern filed on Lily, from Tennessee, from her school. The air went out of Crystal like a punch had landed. "Miss Patterson," she said. "I don't know who made the call." "It was her. I know it was her." Crystal's voice had gone flat and careful, the voice of someone managing something that could become unmanageable very quickly. "She always thought she used to look at me like—" She stopped. Lily loved that woman. Lily talked about her every single day. I never said anything bad about her because Lily loved her. She exhaled sharply through her nose. And she called somebody on me. She was worried about Lily, Marcus said. I know why she did it, Crystal said, and the flatness cracked just slightly. I know, I'm not. She pressed her hand to her mouth for a moment. Is someone coming? Someone's going to make a call, Marcus said. In about 20 minutes. I want you to still be here when they do. Crystal looked at him sharply. Why would I? Because running is the one thing that makes this into something it doesn't have to be, Marcus said. He kept his voice even, kept it close, kept it at the level of someone sitting beside her instead of standing above her. Right now, this is a family in a hard spot. The second you put Lily in that car and drive away, it becomes something different. You know that. Crystal was shaking fine, tight tremors that she was holding down with visible effort. Lily shifted in her sleep and made a small sound, and Crystal's hand moved to her hair, automatically smoothing it, and Lily settled back without waking. They'll take her, Crystal said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Darnell doesn't think so. Not if you stay. Not if you talk to them. Darnell doesn't know what these people do, she said. I grew up in the system. Did you know that from 13 to 17, I was in 3 different houses? I know exactly what these people do. Marcus absorbed that. He let it sit between them without rushing past it. I didn't know that, he said. Nobody asks, Crystal said. She was looking at Lily now, and her voice had a kind of stripped quality, like something that had been worn down to its real material. That's why I work so hard to. I know I'm not perfect. I know I make mistakes. I know what I said to her today was. Her voice broke cleanly, and she took a second to collect the pieces. But I am not my mother. I am not going to be my mother. I have held on to that every single day since she was born. I believe you, Marcus said. Don't just say that. I'm not just saying it, Marcus said. I'm saying it because I get to see it. Because you're still here. Because when she fell asleep, you moved your arm so she'd be comfortable, and you didn't even notice you did it. He paused. Absent mothers don't do that. Crystal was crying now, though she was trying hard not to be tears tracking down her face, while her expression fought to remain neutral, the specific look of someone who has decided that crying is a form of losing and hasn't quite caught up with the fact that not everything is a fight to be lost or won. I don't know what to do, she said. And it was the most honest thing she had said, yet stripped of defensiveness, stripped of story. Just the bare, quiet truth of a woman at the end of what she could manage on her own. I know, Marcus said. That's why we're here. It was Eddie who saw the county vehicle first. He said nothing, just made a small, specific gesture at Marcus' 2 fingers, direction of the road. Marcus looked up and saw the white SUV slowing at the entrance of the lot, and he stood up and he walked over to Eddie fast. How do you want to handle this? Eddie said. Friendly, Marcus said. Visible. We stay visible. Eddie turned to the group without raising his voice and communicated this in the way only Eddie could, through pure physical presence, a shift in posture, a look that moved from man to man like a current. The brotherhood settled. Not tense, not aggressive, just present. The way a wall is present, the way a promise is present. The SUV parked and a woman got out. Janet Reeves was maybe 45, compact in county-issue polo and khakis, with close-cropped hair, and the measured walk of someone who had arrived at a great many difficult situations and learned that the first 30 seconds of how you walk toward them sets the tone for everything that follows. She looked at the lot, at the bikes, at the men, at Marcus, standing between her and the curb where Crystal sat with Lily, and she didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, just kept walking with the same steady pace. Mr. Washington, she said when Darnell stepped forward. Janet, Darnell said, thank you for coming in person. I thought it was better, she said. She looked past him at Crystal, at Lily still asleep. She took that in for a moment, and her face did the professional thing that trained people's faces do, absorbed the information filed. It moved forward. Is Mom approachable? She's scared, Marcus said. Janet looked at him. You are Marcus Holt. I was the first one who talked to the little girl. Janet studied him for a brief moment, the leather jacket, the silver hair, the expression on his face that was protective without being hostile. She seemed to make a decision about him. All right, Mr. Holt, she said. Let me lead this. Understood, he said. Just go easy. Janet's expression shifted almost imperceptibly towards something that might have been a small, grim kind of compassion. I always go easy, she said. It's the situation that's hard. She walked over to Crystal. She crouched down, same level, same deliberate humility that Darnell had used, and she said quietly enough that it didn't carry. Crystal, my name is Janet. I am not here to take anyone anywhere. I want you to hear that first. Crystal was looking at her with the eyes of someone who has been told things that turned out not to be true before and is therefore not in a position to simply believe things she's being told. Okay, she said. I understand you're trying to get to your sisters in Georgia, Janet said. Crystal's eyes cut to Darnell. He held up a hand slightly. I told her it's all right. Yeah, Crystal said. Has your sister confirmed you have somewhere to stay when you arrive? She said yes, Crystal said. Then quieter, more honest. She said yes 3 weeks ago. I haven't been able to reach her in 4 days. The silence that followed that admission was short but very full. Janet nodded slowly. Okay, she said. That's helpful to know. She looked at Lily, still sleeping. How old is she? 6, Crystal said. She'll be 7 in October. What's her name? Something in Crystal's voice changed when she answered. Softened. Became the voice of a different version of herself, the version that existed before everything started falling apart. Lily, she said. Lily Grace. That's a beautiful name, Janet said. Crystal looked at her daughter. I chose it before she was born, she said. I used to say it to her when I was pregnant, I'd say it out loud so she'd know it from the start. A small broken pause. So she'd know someone was already thinking about her. Nobody said anything. Lily woke up at that moment the way children wake suddenly, completely looking around with clear eyes, like she'd never been asleep at all. She looked at her mother, she looked at Janet, she looked at Marcus, who was standing a few feet back, and when she found his face, she held onto it for a second the way you hold on to something solid when the ground shifts. Hey, Marcus said. Hey, she said. Lily looked at Janet with a direct, unguarded assessment of a child who has met enough strangers to have developed a rapid and unsentimental system of evaluation. Are you going to take me away from my mama? She said. Janet met the question without blinking. No, she said. I'm going to try to help your mama. Lily looked at Crystal. Crystal was pressing her lips together hard, holding something in by force. Okay, Lily said. She settled back against Crystal's arm rabbit and hand patch in the other and resumed looking at the ground between her shoes, but differently now. Not with resignation, with the particular quality of a child who is waiting to see what the adults she has decided to trust are going to do next. That was the moment, that small, quiet repositioning that undid several of the men standing nearby who had believed themselves long past being undone by things. Victor Salazar turned and walked away 3 paces and stood with his back to the group for a moment, shoulders working. Tommy Briggs sat down on the curb where Lily had been sitting all afternoon and put his elbows on his knees and looked at the sky with an expression that said he was thinking about his own daughter very hard. Marcus pulled out his phone and called his son. He hadn't spoken to Daniel in 6 weeks. 6 weeks of silence following an argument that had started about money and ended about everything else, the way arguments between fathers and sons always eventually do. The phone rang 4 times, and Marcus was preparing himself for voicemail when Daniel picked up. Dad? Hey, Marcus said. He hadn't planned what to say. He found he didn't need to. He stopped, started again. I just wanted to call. A beat of silence. Are you okay? Yeah, Marcus said. I'm okay. He looked at Lily. I just met someone today who made me think about some things. He paused. I'm sorry about what I said. The last time. Another silence, longer. Then, me too, Daniel said. His voice was careful and slightly hoarse, the voice of a young man who has been carrying something and is surprised to be handed a place to put it down. Me too, Dad. Marcus said, I'll call you this week. We'll talk for real. Yeah, Daniel said. Yeah, okay. He hung up. He looked at the phone for a moment, then put it in his pocket. He looked up and found Eddie watching him. Eddie gave him one slow, deliberate nod, the nod of a man who has spent 3 tours watching people find and lose each other and has never stopped believing the finding is worth it. Janet had Crystal's phone now, gently both of them bent over it together, working through the contact for Crystal's sister, trying the number waiting. Marcus watched Crystal's face while the phone rang, watched hope and dread fight each other across her features, watched her jaw work. Then Crystal's face changed completely. "Sandra?" she said. Her voice went up, young, raw, suddenly stripped of every layer of hardness that had built up over months of surviving. "Sandra, it's me." A breath. "Sure. I know I should have called sooner. She stopped. Is it still okay? Are we still? She stopped again, and whatever Sandra said on the other end, it made Crystal close her eyes and tilt her head back and let out one long, shaking exhale that sounded like something leaving her body that had been lodged there for a very long time. "Okay," she said. "Okay, we're coming. We'll be there." She lowered the phone. She looked at Janet, at Darnell, at Marcus. "She's there," Crystal said. "She's been trying to call me my phone. I had to get a new number last month, and I forgot to." She shook her head. "She's there. She has a room ready." Janet smiled then, and it was a real smile, the smile of someone who sees this kind of thing end badly often enough that when it doesn't, it registers. "Well," she said, "that's a good start." Crystal looked at Lily. Lily was looking up at her. "We're going to Aunt Sandra's," Crystal said. Lily absorbed this. Then she held up the Brotherhood patch. "Can I bring this?" Crystal looked at the patch. She looked at Marcus, who was standing with his hands in his jacket pockets, and something moved across her face that she didn't try to contain this time. "Yeah, baby," she said. Her voice was thick. "You can bring that." Lily held the patch against her chest alongside Stay's and looked at Marcus with those brown eyes that had been hollow when he first found her and were no longer hollow now, were lit with something small and new and fierce, something that had not been there 2 hours ago. "Marcus," she said. "Yeah, Lily." "I'm going to remember this day," she said. It wasn't a question. It wasn't directed at him exactly. It was the statement of a 6-year-old making a promise to herself out loud in front of a witness, the way children do when they understand instinctively that some moments need to be named in order to be kept. "So will I," Marcus said. He meant it in ways he didn't yet have words for. Because standing in that parking lot watching Janet walk Crystal through the resource list that Darnell had compiled, watching Tommy hand Lily a granola bar from what was apparently a bottomless saddlebag, watching Eddie stand at the edge of the lot with his arms crossed and his chin up like a man guarding something worth guarding, Marcus understood with the slow clarity of something that had been assembling itself in him for hours that this was not over. This was not a thing that was going to resolve quietly and go back to being ordinary. Something had started here. He didn't know its shape yet. He didn't know where it was going. But it was started, and some things once started will not stop. The convoy didn't leave without her. That was the thing Marcus would try to explain later when people asked him how it happened, how a charity run turned into something else entirely. He would say, "We just didn't leave. Nobody announced it. Nobody called a vote. Eddie didn't get on the radio and say, 'Change of plans, brothers.' It just became understood the way certain things become understood among people who have ridden together long enough to think in formation that Crystal's car was not going to pull out of that lot and drive 200 miles to Georgia alone. Not today, not with Lily in the back seat and $7 left and a woman who hadn't slept in 3 days behind the wheel. It was Victor Salazar who said it first out loud to the group nearest him, "We ride with them." Nobody argued. Marcus walked over to Crystal's car, a 2009 Honda Civic with a cracked taillight and a back seat that was visibly heartbreakingly a place where someone had been living. A laundry bag wedged in the corner, a pillow, a stack of papers with rubber bands around them, a plastic bin of Lily's things, a few clothes, 2 books, a coloring set with half the crayons missing. Marcus saw Crystal notice him seeing it, and he watched her chin come up, and he said nothing. Just looked at her steadily until the chin came back down. "You don't have to do this," Crystal said. "Escort us or whatever you're—" 200 miles is 200 miles, Marcus said, "and you need to sleep when you get there." "I can sleep when I get there." "You need to get there first," he said. She stared at him. Her eyes were still raw at the edges, still red, but there was something different in them now than there had been 2 hours ago when he first crouched down in front of her daughter. 2 hours ago, her eyes had the sealed quality of someone who has learned to keep everything behind glass. Right now, the glass had cracks in it and light was coming through. "Why do you care this much?" she said. It wasn't hostile. It was genuine. The real question of a woman who had been let down by enough people that caring without motive had become something she genuinely did not understand. Marcus thought about it honestly before he answered. Because your daughter named her rabbit Stays, he said, and I want to make sure she understands why. Crystal looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned away and got into the car, and she didn't say anything else, and Marcus took that as a yes. Lily was already buckled in the back seat, Stays in her lap, the Brotherhood patch tucked carefully inside her shirt against her skin. She had told Marcus she was keeping it there so she wouldn't lose it. He had told her that was a very good idea. She had nodded with the seriousness of a child who has made a decision of consequence and intends to honor it. As Marcus walked back to his bike, his phone vibrated. He looked at the screen, a number he didn't recognize. He almost let it go to voicemail. He didn't. Marcus Holt, he said, a woman's voice. Professional, slightly clipped, the voice of someone who makes many calls a day and has learned to get to the point. Mr. Holt, this is Dr. Rachel Simmons. I'm the director of the Clover Hill Family Services Center in Whitfield County, Georgia. I received a referral call from Janet Reeves about 40 minutes ago. Marcus stopped walking. Okay, he said carefully. I want you to know that we have a family transitional unit available beginning Monday. Full services, stable housing, child support, enrollment, adult employment, counseling, medical. She paused. But I need the family to make contact with our intake coordinator before they arrive. Tonight if possible. I can make that happen, Marcus said. Mr. Holt, Dr. Simmons said, and her voice shifted slightly, became less clipped, more human. Janet told me what happened at that gas station today. The way those men showed up for that little girl. A pause. I've been doing this work for 19 years. I want you to know that what you did today, what your group did, that's the kind of thing that actually changes outcomes. Not programs, not paperwork, people deciding to stay. She stopped. I don't say that often. Marcus stood beside his bike with the phone against his ear and the sun moving west above him and the sound of engines and men around him and something pressing very hard against the inside of his chest. Thank you, he said. I'll have her call tonight. He hung up. He stood there for one moment alone in the way you can be alone in the middle of 150 people when something has just landed in you that needs a second to settle. Then he put the phone in his pocket and got on his bike and started the engine. Eddie came alongside him on his road glide. We good, he said over the engine. We're very good, Marcus said. Eddie looked at him, one of those looks that read things a man doesn't say out loud. He nodded once, then let's ride. The convoy formed up around Crystal's car, not behind it, around it. 2 bikes in front, 2 on each flank, the rest falling into a loose formation behind the way the Brotherhood moved when they were protecting something, when they wanted every car on the road to see the shape of what they were doing and understand that there was a priority here, that something in the middle of this formation mattered, and they were all accountable for it. Crystal pulled out of the lot, and Marcus watched the moment she understood what was happening, watched it through her rear window, watched her look in the mirror and see the bikes flanking her and the bikes in front and the long formation behind, and watched her shoulders change. Watch some held thing in them release slowly the way a breath releases. When you've been holding it so long, you forgot you were holding it. Lily had turned around in the back seat to look out the rear window. She was watching the bikes behind her with the expression of a child who was trying to contain something too big for her face to hold. Tommy Briggs, riding on the right flank, caught her looking and raised one hand from his handlebar in a wave. Just a small one. Just one hand. Lilith pressed her palm flat against the rear window. Tommy's face, visible to Marcus riding behind him, did the thing that faces do when something simple and true makes contact with something that has been waiting for exactly that. The convoy moved. They had been riding for 40 minutes when the first problem happened. Crystal's car slowed. Marcus noticed it before anyone else, the slight loss of speed, the way the Civic drifted a fraction toward the shoulder. His stomach tightened. He moved up alongside the car on the left flank and looked through the driver's window. Crystal was gripping the wheel with both hands, jaw clenched, eyes fighting to stay focused. She was losing the battle with 3 days without sleep and 200 miles of highway, and Marcus could see it happening in real time, the micro corrections, the head dipping and snapping back up. He got on the radio. Eddie, she's falling asleep at the wheel. Eddie's voice came back immediately. Next exit is 4 miles. There's a rest stop. She won't make 4 miles. A 2-second pause. There's a church parking lot coming up on the right. Half a mile. Take it, Marcus said. The two lead bikes peeled right, signaling the exit, and Crystal's car followed, and the convoy pulled off the highway and into the lot of a small Baptist church that was empty and still on a Saturday afternoon, the kind of small building that holds large things. Crystal put the car in park and dropped her forehead against the steering wheel. Marcus was off his bike before the engine died. He knocked on the driver's window gently. She rolled it down. Her eyes were half closed, her face gray with exhaustion. "I'm okay," she said. "You're not," he said, "and that's all right." I can't just..." "Crystal," he said and waited until her eyes met his. "Let someone else drive." "I don't..." She looked at the lot full of men. Something moved through her face, not distrust, but the remnant of distrust, old and reflexive. The kind that lives in the body long after the mind has moved on from it. "I'll ride in the front seat," Marcus said. "Right next to whoever's driving." The whole way. She looked at him. She looked in the mirror at Lily, who had fallen back asleep in the back seat, cheek against the window, stays tucked under her chin, the patch safe inside her shirt against her heart. "She trusts you," Crystal said softly. "I know," he said. "I don't take that lightly." Crystal looked at her daughter for one long moment that had a whole conversation in it. Everything she had done, everything she hadn't done, everything she still intended to do, all the distance between where they were and where she needed them to be. Then she opened the door and got out. It was Darnell who drove. He had a valid license, a clean record, and the unshakable calm of a man who had once talked a seventh grader off a school roof and considered that the most stressful experience of his professional life. He adjusted the mirror, checked the seat, and pulled out of the lot without drama. Crystal was in the passenger seat. Marcus was in the back with Lily, who woke up briefly when the car moved, looked at Darnell, looked at Marcus, and went back to sleep with the total unfazed practicality of a child who has learned to sleep wherever sleep is available. Crystal was asleep 11 minutes later. Marcus sat in the back with a sleeping 6-year-old in the particular quiet of a moving car in a convoy, the sound of engines around them steady as a heartbeat, and he thought about what Dr. Simmons had said. People deciding to stay. He thought about his son Daniel in the 6 weeks of silence, in the 30-second phone call that had opened a door that he would spend the next months learning to walk through properly. He thought about his own father, who had been the kind of man who left rooms without warning, who taught Marcus without meaning to, that love was conditional and presence was temporary, and how long it had taken Marcus to unlearn those lessons and how much he was still unlearning. He looked at Lily sleeping. She was dreaming. He could tell by the small movements of her face, the way her expression shifted through things. He hoped they were good dreams. He hoped that wherever she went when she was asleep, she went somewhere safe, somewhere that had not yet been reached by the knowledge of parking lot curbs and being told nobody loved her. She still had the patch inside her shirt. He had given it to her on impulse, and now watching her sleep with it pressed against her chest, he understood why not, because it was a symbol or a gesture or a thing to make her feel better in the moment. He had given it to her because she had asked if she would be forgotten, and he had not known how to make that promise in a way that lasted, and the patch was the best physical form he could give to a promise he intended to keep. An hour outside of Whitfield County, Crystal woke up. She woke the way Marcus had expected she would, disoriented, grabbing the door handle, looking around fast with the adrenaline of a person who has forgotten where they fell asleep. Then she saw Darnell. Then she looked in the back and saw Marcus and Lily. Her face ran through his calculations. "How long was I out?" she said. "Little over an hour," Darnell said. She exhaled, reached up and rubbed her face hard with both hands. Then she turned and looked at Lily, who was still asleep, and she looked at her with the face that Marcus had seen once before, the one from before everything started falling apart, the one that knew this child's name before she was born. "She's good," Marcus said quietly. Crystal nodded. She turned back to face forward. She was quiet for a while, watching the road, and then she said to Darnell, "Are you a preacher or something?" Darnell glanced at her. "School teacher," he said. 30 years. "You act like a preacher." "I've been told that," he said. "The other men," Crystal said. "The one who gave me the gas card, the one who packed all that food, the young one who did Lily's hair." She shook her head slowly. "Who are you people? We're the Iron Brotherhood, Darnell said. We're just men who ride. Men who ride don't do what you all did today, Crystal said. Darnell was quiet for a moment. Then he said, men who've been lost themselves usually do. Crystal absorbed that. She turned it over and looked at it from different sides, the way you examine something you've never seen the shape of before. Marcus, she said. He leaned forward slightly. Yeah. When we get to Sandra's, she paused. Will you come in? I want Lily to see where you are when we say goodbye. I don't want her to just watch you ride away. I don't want her thinking that's how it ends. It's not how it ends, Marcus said. I know that now, Crystal said, but she needs to see it. Marcus said, I'll come in. The last 20 miles felt different from the first 180. Not shorter exactly, but fuller, the way time changes texture, when something is resolving, when the thing you have been moving toward is finally close enough to feel. Marcus watched the landscape change out the window without seeing it. He was thinking about what came after. Not the ride home, not the charity event they had almost certainly missed completely. Not the logistics or the explanations. He was thinking about Monday and Dr. Simmons and the family transitional unit with full services and whether Crystal would actually call tonight as he'd promised she would. He was thinking about Lily starting school, about her finding another Miss Patterson, another teacher who would say she was a good reader, about the day weeks from now, months from now, when someone would ask her to write about herself and she would have something new to write. His phone vibrated again. He looked at it. A text from Daniel. I told my wife about your call today. She said we should have you over for dinner. She's right. Come next Saturday if you can. Marcus looked at the message for a long time. Then he typed back, I'll be there. He put the phone away. Lily stirred beside him. She opened her eyes, looked at him, looked at the window, looked at the Brotherhood patch that had slipped out from her shirt collar. Are we close? She said. Almost there, Marcus said. She looked at him with those brown eyes, the eyes that had been hollow at the beginning of the day and were not hollow anymore. Marcus, she said. Yeah, Lily. Today was a good day, she said. She said it the same way she said everything plainly, with complete conviction, the way children say true things. Not as a question, not to make anyone feel better, just as a fact she had established and wanted it on record. Marcus felt something move through him, up from the chest behind the eyes, the particular sensation of something that has been compressed for a long time, finally having enough space to expand. Yeah, he said. His voice came out rough at the edges. It was. Lily pulled Stays from her lap and held the rabbit up to him face forward the way she had the first time that small ceremony of presentation. She thinks so too, Lily said solemnly. She's very smart, Marcus said. I know, Lily said. She tucked the rabbit back under her arm and leaned against the car door and looked out at the evening that was coming, the light going gold and long, and she did something that Marcus had not seen her do once in the entire afternoon. Something small, something so ordinary in a child her age that its presence was extraordinary in her. She hummed. Just quietly a few notes, no particular song, just sound for the sake of sound, the way children make noise when they feel safe enough to make noise for no reason. Crystal heard it from the front seat. Marcus saw her go very still. Then slowly, without turning around, she reached one hand back between the seats, palm up open. Lily looked at her mother's hand. She looked at it for 3 full seconds. Then she put her small hand in it. Crystal's fingers closed around her daughter's and she held on, and she didn't let go. And nobody in that car said a single word because there was nothing to say that would have added to what was already there, which was everything. The whole long broken salvageable weight of a day that had started with the most devastating declaration a child can make and was ending with a mother and daughter holding hands in the back of a borrowed convoy 200 miles and a world away from a parking lot curb. Darnell drove. The Brotherhood rode. The evening came down in gold, and Lily hummed. Sandra Doyle was waiting on the porch when the convoy arrived. Marcus saw her before Crystal did, a woman in her mid-30s, smaller than Crystal, with the same dark hair and the same jaw, standing with her arms crossed over her chest and her hands gripping her own elbows, the way people hold themselves when they have been waiting a long time and are afraid that hoping too hard will somehow prevent the thing they are hoping for from arriving. When the headlights swept the front of the house and she saw the shape of the car, she recognized. Her arms dropped to her sides and she came down the porch steps fast. Crystal was out of the car before Darnell had fully stopped it. The two sisters met in the middle of the yard, and the sound Crystal made when Sandra's arms came around her was not a cry exactly, it was something below crying, something that lives deeper than tears. The sound of a person finally setting down a weight that has been carried alone for so long that the setting down itself causes a kind of pain. She made that sound once sharp, and then she was silent, and Sandra held her and rocked her slightly and said nothing. Just held her the way people hold each other when words would be a smaller thing than silence. Lily stood beside Marcus at the edge of this holding stays, watching her mother and her aunt with the serious, clear-eyed attention she brought to everything. After a moment, she said quietly, almost to herself, "Sandra cries when she's happy." "How do you know she's happy?" Marcus said. "Because she's smiling," Lily said. "She's crying and smiling at the same time." She paused. "That's happy." Marcus looked. She was right. Sandra pulled back from Crystal and looked at her face the way you look at someone you've been worried about taking inventory checking. Then she turned and looked at Lily, and her expression went soft and fierce, at the same time the particular expression of an aunt who loves a child and has been kept from that child too long. "Lily Grace," she said. "Hi, Aunt Sandra," Lily said. Sandra crossed to her and crouched down and cupped Lily's face in both hands. She looked at her for a long moment, and whatever she was checking for, she found something she needed to respond to because she pulled Lily in tight and held her the way Crystal had held her on the curb automatically, completely without measuring. Lily's arms went around her aunt's neck, and over Sandra's shoulder her eyes found Marcus, and she gave him one small private nod, the nod of a child who has been watching the world carefully all day and has just added one more piece of evidence to a case she has been quietly building. The Brotherhood had pulled up in a loose formation along the road in front of the house, not crowding the yard, giving the family space but present. Always present, a long line of engines, going quiet one by one like a song ending note by note. Sandra looked up from holding Lily and saw them, all of them, and her expression moved through confusion into something that had no clean name. "Crystal," she said, "who are these people?" Crystal wiped her face with the back of her hand and looked at Marcus. "They're the reason we got here," she said. Sandra stood up. She looked at Marcus specifically and then at the line of men behind him, and she said not grandly, not performatively, just directly, woman to man, with the full weight of what she meant behind it, "Thank you." Marcus said, "Take care of them." "I will," Sandra said. And the simplicity of the exchange, the clean transfer of responsibility, the acceptance of it without ceremony was more than any speech would have been. It was Eddie who found Marcus standing apart from the group 20 minutes later, while Crystal was inside with Sandra and Lily was on the porch eating a bowl of cereal that Sandra had produced with the speed of someone who had been pre-stocking for an arrival she was determined to believe was coming. "We need to talk," Eddie said. Marcus looked at him. Eddie's face had the expression he reserved for information that he had been sitting on and had decided could no longer be sat on. "What happened?" "I got a call from the hospital," Eddie said. "The fundraiser. The director, a woman named Beverly Cross." He paused. "She heard what happened today. Apparently one of the people who stopped at the gas station while we were there, the trucker, the one who sat in his cab, he posted about it online while it was happening." Marcus stared. "He put it on Facebook. Photos. The formation around the lot. The men with Lily. The whole thing." Another pause. "It's been shared 47,000 times." Marcus felt the ground shift slightly under him. 47,000. "As of an hour ago," Eddie said, "Beverly says her phones have not stopped ringing. Donations to the children's hospital. People asking about the Brotherhood. People asking about Lily." He looked at Marcus steadily. "Marcus, a woman in Ohio, saw the post and called the hospital asking how she could send Lily books because her daughter is the same age and loves to read." Marcus stood very still. "A retired teacher in Vermont." Eddie continued, his voice maintaining the same deliberate factual calm. "Called and said she has a box of children's books she wants to ship. A family in South Carolina said they want to donate a year's worth of school supplies." He stopped. "People are responding to that little girl like she belongs to all of them." Marcus turned and looked at the porch where Lily was eating her cereal legs swinging from the step, stays balanced on her knee, entirely unaware that 47,000 strangers had seen her face today and decided she was worth something to them. He thought about what she had said on the curb. "Nobody loves me," said as fact, said as settled truth. He thought about 47,000 shares. Nobody told Crystal yet, he said. No, Eddie said. I thought you should. Marcus nodded slowly. He went inside. Crystal was at Sandra's kitchen table, both hands around a mug of coffee, looking like someone who has just been removed from a long-term emergency and is only now beginning to process what emergency does to a body. Sandra was at the counter talking the easy, low talk of two sisters resuming a conversation that had been paused too long. They both looked up when Marcus came in. Sorry to interrupt, he said. Don't be, Crystal said. She meant it. He sat down across from her and he told her, carefully in order the way you tell someone something that is going to require them to readjust the size of the world they thought they were living in. He told her about the trucker, about the post, about the shares, about the woman in Ohio and the teacher in Vermont and the family in South Carolina. Crystal listened without moving. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Sandra had stopped talking and was watching her sister the way you watch someone standing at the edge of something, ready to reach out if they lean too far. They saw her, Crystal said finally. 47,000 of them, Marcus said. Crystal's jaw worked. She thinks. Her voice broke and she steadied it. She walks around every day believing that she is invisible, that she takes up space that nobody wants her to take up. Her eyes filled. I did that to her. I said those words, and she stored them the way she stores everything, and she built her whole. She stopped, started again quieter. She was sitting on that curb because she had already accepted it. My 6-year-old had already made peace with being unloved. A tear tracked down and she let it go this time without fighting it. What kind of mother? The kind who's sitting in her sister's kitchen right now instead of driving one away, Marcus said. The kind who held her daughter's hand in the car. He held Crystal's eyes. The kind who still can. Sandra put a hand on Crystal's shoulder without speaking. The three of them sat in the kitchen for a moment that was both very long and very brief, the way moments are when they are carrying more than moments usually carry. Then Lily appeared in the doorway. She had finished her cereal. She still had stays. She looked at the three adults at the table with her precise, evaluating eyes, and she looked specifically at her mother's face reading it, the way she read everything thoroughly without flinching from what she found. Mama, she said. Crystal wiped her face quickly. Hey, baby. Are you sad? Crystal looked at her daughter. Something in her expression cleared, became simple and direct in a way that Marcus had not seen from her before, stripped of every complication, every defense from her own. A little, she said honestly, but good sad, the kind that happens when things get better. Lily considered this. Like crying when you're happy, she said. Exactly like that. Lily walked to the table and stood beside her mother's chair, and Crystal's arm came around her, automatically pulling her in, and Lily leaned against her and looked at Marcus over the rim of the table. Are you leaving now? She said. Soon, Marcus said. She nodded once, a single solemn nod. Then she reached inside her shirt and pulled out the Brotherhood patch. She held it in both hands for a moment, looking at it, the worn edges, the stitching, the small shield shape of it. Then she placed it carefully on the table between herself and Marcus, equidistant, like something being placed at the center of a negotiation. I want you to keep half, she said. Marcus looked at her. It doesn't split into 2 pieces, Lily. I know, she said. So you keep the whole thing, and I keep the memory of it. She tapped her chest over her heart. I'll keep it here, and you keep it there. She pointed at his jacket pocket. So we both have it. Marcus picked up the patch. He looked at it for a moment. Then he put it back in his inside pocket, and he pressed his hand flat against the outside of his jacket over where the patch now sat. Deal, he said. Lily nodded. Contract made. Terms accepted. Then she did something that Marcus had not expected and would remember with total clarity for the rest of his life. She walked around the table to his side and she climbed up onto the chair beside him without asking permission. And she put her head against his arm, the way she had leaned against Crystal's arm in the car, with the total unreserved trust of a child who has decided based on extensive evidence, carefully gathered over the course of a single extraordinary day, that this person is safe. Marcus held very still. He looked at Crystal. She was watching, and her expression was the most unguarded it had been all day. Open, raw, grateful in a way that had run out of words. He put his arm around Lily's shoulders, carefully, like holding something that mattered. Marcus, Lily said, her voice muffled slightly against his jacket. Yeah, I'm going to go to school here, she said. Aunt Sandra said. That's great, he said. I'm going to find the best books, she said. And when I find the best one, I'm going to read the whole thing. A pause. Will you want to know what it's about? Absolutely, Marcus said. Okay, she said. Then I'll call you. Crystal made a sound half laugh, half something else, and pressed her hand over her mouth. You don't have my number, Marcus said. Lily sat up and looked at him with the expression of someone who has thought ahead. Then give it to my mama, she said with the unassailable logic of a child who has identified a problem and its solution in the same breath. Marcus looked at Crystal. Crystal looked at Marcus. And for the first time that day, with everything that had happened between them, the anger, the shame, the slow and difficult opening, Crystal Doyle smiled. Not a polite smile, not a performance. A real one. Brief and full and complicated, like most real things are. Marcus pulled out a card, an old one dog-eared with his personal cell written on the back in his own handwriting, and he put it on the table. Crystal picked it up and held it. I'm calling that resource coordinator tonight, she said. The one in Whitfield County. Dr. Simmons, Marcus said. She's expecting you. Crystal nodded. She looked down at the card. Marcus, she paused, finding the right words for something that doesn't fit into ordinary words. I can't, she stopped. Tried again. I've spent a long time being angry at everyone who let me down. I got so used to it that I forgot to look for the people who weren't going to. She looked up. I almost drove away today. I was 2 steps from that car. I know, Marcus said, if you hadn't stayed. But I did, Marcus said. She looked at him for a long moment. Then yeah, she said quietly, you did. Outside, the Brotherhood was getting ready to ride. Marcus could hear the engine starting one by one, the sound of it familiar and deep. The sound of men who had come 200 miles out of their way without complaint and were now pointing themselves home in the dark. He should have felt the pull of it, the road, the formation, the ride back. He did feel it, but he sat for another minute. Because Lily had fallen asleep against his arm again, the way she had in the car, the way she fell asleep everywhere now. Suddenly, completely without hesitation, and he sat with her weight against his side, and the patch in his inside pocket, and the sound of engines coming to life outside, and he thought about all the things that had to be exactly what they were for this day to have happened. The broken down life that put Crystal on Route 9. The charity run that brought the Brotherhood past the same gas station at the same hour. The 10-minute stretch break that Eddie had called for no particular reason. The trucker who stopped and watched and decided to tell someone. The 47,000 people who looked at a photo of a little girl and felt something break open in them. And Lily who had sat alone on a curb and spoken the worst truth of her small life out loud to the open air, not asking for rescue, not expecting it, just naming it. Bearing witness to her own pain with the quiet dignity of a child who had not yet been taught that dignity was optional. She had named it, and the world had answered. Marcus gently moved Lily from his arm to Crystal's, and Crystal received her without waking her, pulling her close, and Marcus stood up. He looked at the two of them, the mother and the daughter, the beginning of something being rebuilt between them. Board by board, truth by truth, hand in hand, across a car's back seat. Call Dr. Simmons tonight, he said again. Don't put it off. I won't, Crystal said. And Crystal, he paused, tell her the good things too. Not just the hard ones. Tell her about the name, how you chose it before she was born, how you said it to her so she'd know someone was thinking about her. He watched Crystal's face. That matters. That's not nothing. Crystal pressed her lips together hard. She nodded once. He walked out. Eddie was waiting by Marcus's bike engine off, standing with his helmet under his arm. The rest of the Brotherhood was in formation, a long, quiet line, engines idling low. Darnell was there. Victor. Tommy, who looked up when Marcus came out with the expression of someone who has had the day they expected least from a Saturday and is not yet sure what to do with the size of it. Ready, Eddie said. Yeah, Marcus said. He put on his helmet, he got on his bike. He started the engine and felt a familiar vibration move through him, up through his hands and his chest, the feeling he had been chasing for 11 years. The feeling of something real. Something that didn't require a committee to confirm that it mattered. He looked up at the porch. Lily was there. She had woken up, or maybe she had never fully been asleep. She was standing on the porch with stays in her arms and the evening behind her, and she raised one hand above her head, flat palm, the same gesture she had pressed against the rear window hours ago on the highway. Marcus raised his hand back. Then he pulled out of the drive, and Eddie pulled out behind him, and the brotherhood fell in one by one, the formation assembling itself in the dark with the ease of long practice, and they rode. They didn't roar. They didn't rev their engines or make a show of it. They just moved a long, quiet procession of men and machines heading back the way they had come, carrying the day. With them, carrying the weight of a little girl's name and the memory of a patch, and the particular feeling that lives in a person when they have been exactly where they needed to be at exactly the moment it mattered. Marcus rode with the patch against his chest and the evening air on his face and the brotherhood all around him, and he thought about what Lily had said. I'm going to remember this day. He thought, so will every man riding behind me. He thought about the phone call from Daniel, about Saturday dinner, about the door that had been closed for 6 weeks and was now open, and the long work of learning to walk through it without breaking it again. He thought about Crystal making a phone call tonight that was going to be the first hard step of something better. He thought about Dr. Simmons, who had been doing this work for 19 years and had taken time to tell him that people deciding to stay was what actually changed outcomes. He thought about 47,000 strangers who had seen a little girl on a parking lot curb and had not looked away. He thought about Lily at 6 years old sitting alone with a one-eyed rabbit, having already made her peace with being unloved, and about the moment somewhere between a granola bar and a hair tie and a brotherhood patch pressed flat against a small chest when that peace had become unnecessary. When she named the rabbit Stays, that was the thing Marcus carried home that night, and every night after, the image of a little girl deciding in the middle of the worst day of her small life that something was worth keeping, that something intended to remain. It was not a lesson that arrived quietly. It arrived the way the brotherhood arrived, in formation, in numbers, with the low roar of engines that could be heard from a long way off, and with the particular undeniable presence of people who had made a decision and were not going to unmake it. Love doesn't always come quietly. Sometimes it comes with 150 bikes, and it finds you on a curb, and it kneels down to your level, and it says your name like it matters, because it does, because you do, because nobody who has ever been truly seen by another person stays invisible forever. Lily Grace Doyle had been seen, and the world that had seemed so empty of people willing to stay had turned out on one ordinary Saturday in August to be full of them.